Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dive Deep. I'm Shelby Cornett. I'm the ministry assistant at Cambridge City Christian Church, and I'm with Danny again, the lead pastor.
Wait a minute. You said I'm with Danny again.
Again. I almost said again.
Again. I don't know how to take that.
Well, you're the one that was preaching last week, so.
Oh, yeah, I guess I do have to be here.
I guess it could just be the Shelby and Danny show instead of my show, because it's my show.
Well, wow. It's your show.
It's my show.
Yeah,
I'm the
it
boss.
is. That's true.
I do the intro.
Yep.
I do the interviewing. It's my show.
Okay. All right. Well,
Anyways,
I'll try to behave myself then.
last week we were still in the Sun series, and we talked about the good soil of truth and
Yeah.
how you can grow depending on your soil.
Yep.
So the soil is what?
So the soil is your heart. It's where it's kind of like when you plant a plant. You got to have good soil for it to grow. Well, the word is the seed that grows in us, but you have to have your heart in the right place to be good soil.
Okay.
And I talked a little bit in the message about how we need to cultivate it and prepare it so that when that seed, as that seed grows in us, it has an easier time of doing that. And Jesus in the parable talked about rocky soil, and then there was some soil where there was a thin layer of soil, but then it was rock underneath. So at first it looked like it was growing, but then it didn't.
Right.
So it's a really it's a good parable to help us think about, okay, what does our hearts look like? Is it maybe soft on the outside but hard on the inside, or maybe it's hard on the outside? So yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I remember when I read this, I don't remember if I read it in the story or the Believe, but I remember being confused because I didn't know if the soil was like how you surround what you surround yourself with, or if it was your heart, but I guess they kind of coincide.
Yeah, they're kind of the same. I mean, your heart represents a lot of things, really. I mean, it's the way that you feel, the way that you listen. Jesus, in this parable, talked about how we have to have ears to hear, and so that's really what the soil is. That's what I meant by cultivating it. Is you're cultivating your heart by allowing the word to implant itself in your soil, in your heart, and to grow. And there are different things like you do with soil in your garden, right? You put fertilizers and whatnot. You till it up, and that's really what Jesus is getting at is what are you doing so that seed can grow
Right.
in your life. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't doing a lot of tilling and fertilizing. Maybe they took the seed in and it's kind of there and grown a little bit, but they're not the way that their attitude is, the way they look on life. It's not changed.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wrote down all the examples you gave of different things. I wrote down like the two that I feel like I related to the most. Obviously, I'm working on the good soil thing because that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
But when you talked about the seed on the rocks and how you're joyful at first and you take it all in and then but it doesn't go anywhere. Like I think that's easy to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I think about that as like Sunday morning when you hear everything and you're really excited, but then during the week if you don't do anything then it just dies.
Yeah.
So-
That's a great example. Yeah.
And then with I forget how you worded it. Like growing up and getting tangled.
Yeah. I mean, we get thorns. There's
Thorns, that's how you
that can happen too. It's the entanglements of life. So it could. Well, I mean, you're raising two little ones. I mean, even our kids, even our jobs, even the fun things we do, school. I mean, all these different things can kind of choke out the seed that's trying to grow in us because we're so overwhelmed by all those other things that we don't focus on our own growth in Christ.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I said like the fertilizer when you're working on yourself. I had that as when you said give yourself. For me, that would be like keeping up on my studying, doing devotionals and everything. And then obviously like the loving God and loving others. So that would that be like the fertilizer? And
Yeah, reading the Word, loving God, loving others, getting out and serving others. What that does is it's kind of like kind of like a cycle that kind of builds on itself. So the more that I open up my heart, the more that God grows in me, thus the more my heart becomes open, thus the more I grow again. And it's kind of this big cycle. And, we often forget that there's a part in all of this that God has to play. God caused the growth, but what are we allowing the soil to be? So there is a part in this whole process. I've heard some people say, well, especially with their kids, and this is one that's concerned me through the years, is like, well, I don't want to force my kids into accepting Jesus or whatever. And I get the sentiment with that, but the problem with that is that it's almost like we're saying, what I think what most parents are saying is, well, I'm just going to leave it all on their own. Like, they're going to have to figure it out for themselves. No way. I mean, we should be cultivating soil in their hearts so that as they hear the word, then God can do what he's going to do in it. But a lot of times we don't. We just think, well, it's just up to my kids. And unfortunately, I think that's why we're seeing a lot of kids fall from the faith.
So we have to plant the seed in our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And help cultivate the soil. Read them Bible stories, pray with them, teach them these things when they're younger. Now, obviously, they're going to still have to make a choice as they get older. But you have to help cultivate that. It would be almost like saying, okay, Jesus, well, here's your seed, the seed of the word. We're just going to throw it on the floor. Good luck growing. That's kind of what we're doing. No, you have to prepare the soil so that seed can grow. And I think that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the only other question I had was, and we kind of talked about it, I guess, but when we talked about our hearts being crowded, what advice would you give to someone whose heart is crowded?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've talked about this in some of my messages. I think you have to look. It starts with your schedule, I think. Your schedule has a way of dictating where your heart is. So if you're really into, let's say you're a student in high school and you're really into playing basketball, your schedule is going to rotate around basketball. Or as a parent, around your kids. Or if you're a hardworking person who wants to advance in your company or whatever it is, you're going to spend a lot of time at work. I think we have to step back and we have to look at our schedule first. And if we don't want us to be crowded, we have to start, as hard as it is, we have to start the process of eliminating some things in that schedule so that God has the room that he needs to grow us. I mean, if working and trying to get ahead is keeping you from being in a life group or attending worship or on a day-to-day basis, prayer or study and reading the word, then you need to reevaluate what your schedule looks like, because your schedule says everything. I mean, I really have become more and more convinced that even in my own life, if my schedule is dictated by X, whatever it is, then that's where my heart is. And Jesus is going to have a really hard time growing in that kind of a heart.
Right.
So that would be probably the first piece of advice I'd give is look at your schedule to make
sure you have room.
Yeah.
To grow and for God.
Yeah, it comes down to, it's like anything in life. It comes down to priorities. What are your priorities? And if your priority is God, then your schedule should reflect that. Unfortunately, a lot of people have allowed their schedules to kind of be molded and dictated by other people or circumstances. And they think, well, I don't have any control over my schedule. You really do. We really do have more control over it than we think. I mean, even if you're working 2 jobs and whatnot, there are certain things you can do within that schedule to make sure that you have time with God every day. Maybe you don't watch that TV show that you wanted to watch, or you don't, go do that, whatever it is that you were going to do because you want to focus on your relationship with God. So we have more room in there than we think.
Yeah.
I don't think the problem for most of us is finding the room. The problem is doing it, because it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
We get in this cruise control,
Right.
And it's hard to shut that off and go a different route. It is. So.
Well, that's all I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I mean, I think I touched on it. The only thing maybe I'd add is, in the middle of this pandemic, I think it has been really easy for our faith to get crowded out. we've just been so focused on the pandemic, and I know over the last several months with sermons and whatnot, I've tried to talk a lot, not maybe every week, but just about every week, about how fear and how our worries. I mean, those are the biggest entanglements we run into because with a job, you can go to in most cases you can go to a job, leave your job, but with fear and worry, it goes with you everywhere you go, and so you have to figure out a way to lay that aside. And I know my message coming up this Sunday is kind of touching on this when Jesus is in the boat with his disciples. There was something in that story that really I had never caught before. And so hopefully everybody will watch it this Sunday and see what that is. I think it'll be helpful for a lot of us to stay out of the entanglements.
Yeah.
So.
Well, cool. So that's all I had.
Okay.
So thank you guys for watching. We'll be in person.
Yes.
For service this Sunday.
I know. We're going to be in
excited.
person again. I know. I hope I can remember everyone's names.
Yeah.
So.
It's been so long.
I know. And I hope they can remember my name. Yeah. They may not even remember mine,
We'll have to give directions to the church.
Well, I know. And we were talking to Travis, when Travis came on our staff, it was in December, not of this past year, but of 19. And then we went into shutdown in the middle of March. So Travis is going to have to learn everybody's names all over again.
So everybody wear a name tag when you come to church on Sunday. That's right, wear a name tag
or put it on your forehead or whatever.
On your mask.
Write it on your mask. There you go. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget you can send questions for me to ask Danny. And that's it. Have a good week.